Millions of Americans remember watching with goosebumps the day we put a man on the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
July 20th, 1969, a huge day in American history. But there are those who would have us believe the moon landings were nothing but a massive hoax.
With close scrutiny of the motives of the zealous Nixon administration, a critical examination of the entirely government-controlled press coverage, and newly discovered footage of the crew of Apollo 11 staging part of their mission, we wish to detail what may come to be the greatest government conspiracy of all time.
Okay. All right, this film actually claims that the moon landings were created on a movie set to get America ahead in the space race, and they've put together a so-called list of evidence. For instance, video of our flag on the moon rippling as if it's blown by the wind. There's no wind on the moon. Why don't pictures from the moon show stars in the sky? Also, because of the direction of the shadows, the film claims there had to have been artificial lighting. Why is there no burn crater where the engine supposedly landed? Well, you can imagine how all of this is going over with the astronauts. The film producer ambushed astronaut Buzz Aldrin, the second man to set foot on the moon, trying to get him to swear on a Bible that it was real. Here's what happened.
Will you get away from me? You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Go Buzz. All right, you know, some people say this is just crazy talk, but these hoax theories are getting NASA's attention. The agency was ready to pay $15,000 for a book to debunk the hoax theory. Late last week, because of all the attention, they decided to scrap it, but it's clearly a thorn in their side. We're joined now by one of the leaders of the hoax movement, the producer of that documentary, Bart Sibrel, as well as astronomer Phil Plait. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sibrel, if you were going to say there was one thing in particular that convinces you it was a hoax, what would it be?
Well, if you saw the film, at the end of it, we show newly discovered footage of a false shot of them claiming to be halfway to the moon. I've done a little diagram here to show for the viewers. Here's the Earth over here. Here's the moon. They're supposedly 2 days into the flight, as the tape is dated here, looking back at a small Earth. You can see basically the TV image would be of a little Earth with black all around it. Now, what they did is they placed a transparency over the circular window with the sun coming in from behind it. So this circle is actually a window of the spacecraft with the lights off. And they placed a transparency over the window of the Earth, probably shot from an unmanned probe. And this footage, dated by an atomic clock 2 days into the flight, clearly shows them putting the transparency up, taking it away, proving that they were here.
All right.
In Earth orbit.
Mr. Sibrel, let me just give Mr. Plait, this sounds like wacko stuff to me. I mean, it's not that I know the details. I watched the movie. It still seems kind of like nutso to me, and yet NASA was ready to spend $15,000 to debunk it. What is the main problem with Mr. Sibrel's argument? I guess it would require some huge conspiracy on the part of every single astronaut, including just about every single member of NASA as well, I'd assume.
Well, I would say the main problem with his theory is that it's completely wrong. It's just based on evidence that doesn't exist. There's no evidence that the astronauts faked this footage, and as a matter of fact, there's a lot of evidence that it is in fact real. And all the claims that he makes in this quote-unquote documentary are just wrong.
I mean, for example, they say that you can't see the stars, but the argument goes, I assume, you wouldn't be able to see the stars because they're too faint, right?
Well, that's correct. The stars are faint, and the shots from the lunar surface, even though the sky is black because there's no air on the moon, the sun is still shining, and it's still lighting up the lunar landscape and the astronauts. And so when they took pictures, they were exposing properly for the sunlit astronauts. And so stars are too faint to show up when you set the camera that way.
And Mr. Sibrel, you think that all the astronauts, in conjunction with anyone in NASA who says that they were involved in this, they're all lying?
Absolutely. The fact is that very few people at NASA in 1969 knew what was going on. I mean, here we have the greatest event in human history, and there's no independent press coverage. There's only 3 eyewitnesses to it, and a TV picture controlled by the federal government. The fact is they didn't go to the moon. My newly discovered footage proves that. I would bet my life on it. Mr. Plait is an employee of NASA. That's how he gets his paycheck. And if they really went to the moon, people who say otherwise are idiots. And yet if you go to the web, you find out somebody's spending tens of thousands of hours to debunk so-called moon landings that are supposed to be so obvious.
That's what I want to get the last answer from Mr. Plait on. I mean, it just does seem like wacko stuff to me. Why is NASA spending so much time on this?
People believe all sorts of stuff that's wrong. I mean, that's just a given. If you package something up slickly enough, you can make people scratch their heads and wonder about it. This has been a thorn in NASA's side for a long time. For a long time, their official stance has been to ignore it. But once the stuff has hit the web, it's becoming like something growing in a dark, damp place. It's just getting bigger. And NASA finally said, look, we need to do something about it. They got a little bit of bad publicity, which is not too surprising, and they pulled out. However, there are people that have websites like mine where we'll be happy to debunk this.
I've got to wrap it up. Phil Plait, Bart Sibrel, thanks a lot.